You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonagh. Welcome to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. This time, we're going to be talking with Jessica Onick, who is the Senior Director of Internal and Executive Communications at GitHub. I'm so excited to talk with Jessica about the dirty P word, the second dirty P word, process and prioritization. We're actually going to talk about both of them. Prioritization being the thing that everyone tells us to do when we come to them and say, we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough resources, we need more. And then they say, you just need to prioritize, right? This is the thing that we all hear over and over and over again. And don't take that part personally, right? I mean, every business area will hear that. And I will tell you that every single time I work with someone as a consultant, there are always opportunities for improvements in prioritization and process. That said, it's not a magic bullet. Can't be, right? Because sometimes it's just about them not seeing what it is that we actually do. I brought in Jessica here because Jessica and I, full disclosure, work together. And she is a member of the Raise the Tide group. And I happen to know that she's done some really significant work on prioritization and also helped some of the other women in our group with some of their prioritization exercises. So thought I'd bring her in to say, what do you do when you think this prioritization thing might be actually true and you can do things a little differently? And let's start from there. So first, Jessica, can you tell us a little bit about your role at GitHub, what your team does? What does your company do?
I'd love to. Tara, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
So I oversee, like you said, internal and executive communications at GitHub. I have a team of 12 comms pros who are responsible for all things employee communications, executive communications, and what we call visual communications, just a little bit unique in our industry. Visual communications is our presentation and graphic design team that helps elevate our communications work and storytelling, both internally and externally. So the team is responsible for a very wide remit of work. GitHub is a software company, for those who aren't familiar with it. We serve over 100 million developers around the world who come together on our platform to collaborate and build. So we're highly focused on innovation and serving our community and serving our customers. And yeah, the comms team we've been through a lot of evolution in the last year. So I'm excited to talk.
Great. How many team members do you have, Jessica? And how has this grown with the company or responsibility or other ways you measure growth of team?
Currently 12, and this is more than double where we were at a year ago. So today we are responsible for a huge range of programs, including change communications, employee-facing events, employee news, the launch of a new intranet, executive thought leadership and reputation management, leader communications enablement, a whole host of other things. And those are big buckets. And you can kind of imagine the tactical requests and the to-do list items that fall within each of those. And over the past year, we've gotten really good at filtering through the noise and prioritizing what's most impactful for our business, which is what has led to this unexpected growth in the team. And so ultimately, we're responsible for protecting and elevating the company. And, when the more we do that, the more investment we've seen in the team. And so I've hired a lot in the last 6 months. In the last 4 months, I've hired 6 people, which has been, I talked about this a little bit on LinkedIn recently. It's been a really interesting journey and a huge learning experience. And now we're onboarding a lot of people. So we're going to see even more kind of change and evolution and need for further prioritization as we can get all these folks on board and really figure out how the team stays laser focused at a larger scale.
I can practically hear the communicators listening, salivating at the concept of having 12 team members.
I know.
So here's the thing. You're coming at it like from this, like, oh, I'm so sorry I get to have 12 team members. But no, let's just like embrace it. And I just wanted to share that
I'm so
because
proud of it. I'm so proud of how large the team has gotten because it really is. We don't see that investment, especially in internal comms and executive comms. We see I started my career in PR, and we see a lot of investment in PR as a sort of established and maybe slightly better understood comms discipline. And so the investment that GitHub has made in internal and executive comms is such a source of pride for me.
I 100% agree. And I tell you, I'm like, no, we're going to stand in this pride. We're going to allow this joy. We're going to celebrate this win. And I share that because I think the comms folks listening, we're talking about prioritization, right? But the prioritization exercise led to the growth of your team.
Totally.
And so I just want people to keep that in mind when we're talking about this process, how you underwent it, the executive feedback, their engagement in it, because that's all critical to where you are today. So we're kind of already starting from future state. This is a goal, everybody. Keep it in mind, right? It might not be 6 team members for you, but it could be something. So I happen to work with Jessica, as I mentioned. I know a bit of the background and hearing about how it all went down and guiding a bit as well. And I think our listeners would benefit from hearing about how you were told to prioritize, given the current resources and process of prioritization and then involving the executive team. So let's start with hearing that you need to prioritize. Was this in response to pressures on the company impacting the business or every business everywhere because of the economy? Was it something else? Where did this start from?
It was a lot of things. We hear this a lot as communicators, like prioritize, but also do everything I need you to do. Don't drop any ball. So this isn't new, but last year, 2023, was a tough year in the tech industry. We saw a lot of consolidation across the entire market, and there were a variety of factors. There were economic shifts and the way our business changed to adapt to that. And then also, frankly, I had some rock stars on my team who moved on to the next exciting chapters in their careers. And so I was in a space in the summer of 2023 where I lost 40% of my headcount in just a couple of months. People were moving on for great reasons and reasons that I really, really supported. I had some people make moves internally within the company. I had some people leave the company to go start their own comms teams at other companies, but we weren't backfilling because of the state of the economy. So when I had people moving on, I was not able to hire right away to replace them. And it was really tough. And the response that I got from my leadership, and this is also right around the time that I started working with you, Tara, and I was kind of like, what do I do? I don't have the capacity. My team doesn't have the capacity. We have too much on our plates. And the response that I got from my leadership team wasn't so much, you need to prioritize. It was very much, well, what are you going to do? Shows a lot of trust that I'm grateful for, but also meant that I had a lot of motivation to prove that I could get this under control. And so we prioritized, and that was where this started.
All right. So how was your response to the, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to figure it out? What did you do?
So I sat down. I sat down with some key people on my team, and we really sprinted on this prioritization project. We wrote down everything. What are we currently responsible for? What do we want to be responsible for? What was someone else who is no longer here responsible for that we now need to absorb? What do we wish we never had to do again? We wrote everything down, and we categorized everything. And then we looked at our mission. And I think this is really key. My internal comms team has a really clear mission. We exist to drive shared understanding of our business strategy. And we come back to this over and over again. And the team hears me say these words ad nauseum. We exist to drive shared understanding of our business strategy. And within that, we're also, of course, focused on thinking about things like culture and belonging and helping employees find the information they need. But ultimately, it's all in service of this mission that closely maps to our business priorities and our business goals. So without that shared understanding of our business strategy, none of our employees or our leaders can be effective. And so that's the lens through which we started to look at everything we were working on. Is this driving shared understanding? If it is, then what is the value that we're adding to it? And how do we make sure that we're approaching this work at the right altitude, whether that's consulting and advising or partnering closely or getting deep in the weeds and driving this thing from start to finish? What role should we be playing in this thing that drives shared understanding? And if it's not driving shared understanding, it's something that is a vanity project or a passion project for someone, or it's something fun and unique, but it's not critical to our mission, or it's a rhythm of business program that happens every single year at the same time or every quarter at the same time. So how can we support that in a very hands-off way? So this is where we started getting like really tactical. So now what do? We know what things fall into these categories. So what do we do about it? And we developed a library of resources for our partners. We called it a self-serve library. And it includes templates and guidelines and guardrails and instructions for everything from hosting an event to writing an internal news post to creating a comms plan. And we share, we still share it. We use it all the time. We share it anytime we get a new request on something that we can't take on. We're still here and available as consultants, but we have the infrastructure in place now to be able to point our partners to what they need and not consume our own time on these low impact projects. So that we just really dove in on writing it all down, getting really clear for ourselves on our mission and what things fall within that mission. And then we had a plan for the things that didn't.
So sounds like it was you and one additional team member. Is that right?
Yes. For internal comms. Yeah. I had at that point in time, I only had one person sitting on the internal comms team. So she and I just really went deep on this together.
So one of the challenges that I hear often when we get to this prioritization exercise is I don't want to upset my business partners by saying no. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you faced, and how did you address it with your team?
Such a good question. Getting my team on board with this was not the challenge. The person who was sort of like the last person standing on the internal comms team was hungry for something like this. And the broader team at that, I also had the exec comms team reporting to me and the visual comms team, and the broader team, they're looking for clarity, right? Everybody's looking for clarity in their jobs. And so it's good for their careers and their growth to take a lot of low impact work off their plates and free up some time for us to really get creative about areas of opportunity where they can take on more strategic work. But yes, to your point, when it comes to having to tell partners across the business and leaders across the business that the thing that they need our help with is not a priority, that's tricky. This is why I hate the term ruthless prioritization. I hate it.
Yeah, you're putting the word ruthless in front of something, right? As if that solves it. We'll just be ruthless about it.
We'll just be ruthless, right? And for a function that is so people-centric, ruthlessness is not one of my core values. Prioritizing with rigor and intention and laser focus is, yes, something that I feel very strongly about, but I don't believe it should be a ruthless process. And in fact, I think it should be done, it was for us done with great care and emotional intelligence and intentionality. It's maybe more something, I don't know, maybe it's something like, I don't know, intelligent prioritization or purposeful prioritization. Like there's something else there that we should be calling this. But my point is that there's a lot of strategy behind it. And, we're not here to cut people off at the knees. So when it came to this, to your question about how we sort of approach this with our partners, what I coached my team to do is to just be really thoughtful about how we guide them to self-serve the things that we were no longer going to do. It's not that we're telling them that it wasn't important. In some cases, maybe it wasn't, but that's not what we're saying to people who are prioritizing these things. It's that we truly didn't believe that they needed us to do this work. And so with the right guidance and templates from us, they can kind of take ownership of their own communications as subject matter experts. And we can focus on the programs that need a lot more strategy and comms expertise behind them. So yeah, it hasn't been smooth. Don't get me wrong. We definitely have had partners who were extremely dismayed about losing that dedicated support. Of course, there in any company, I think that there are teams and individuals who really have grown used to viewing comms as a tool that they use to execute, and they're not going to be happy about the way that we're reframing our purpose and the changes that we're making as a result. But we had leadership buy-in, and we can talk a little bit about that. But ultimately, diplomacy and gentle resistance are going to win out, and that's especially true if you can back it up with clear comparison against what you're using that time for instead. And for us, we were able to show that our time was being used so much more wisely, and the results, the way that we measure how we drive shared understanding, because we do have metrics and ways of measuring that we report against. And as we're seeing shared understanding skyrocket over the course of 2023, it was really clear that we were making the right calls.
So you said a key thing there, which I think everybody's going to be curious about, is how did you engage the executive team in understanding this new approach? They may have said ruthlessly prioritize, or what are you going to do about it, or whatever. But it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to stand behind it once you see what it means. So yeah, what was their reaction to all of this?
Super supportive. And I think, I'm very lucky in that I have a leadership chain in place for comms that is very, very supportive and a huge advocate of the comms function. Once we had our priorities in place, and these were short-term priorities, right? Like, here's what we can do in the next 3 months, given our current resources and the business priorities right now. In the future, we could do more with other resources, but this is where we're at right now. Once we had that down, we took it to our leadership chain. And so I got buy-in from my manager was key, and the leader that we report into. I mentioned that I was down 40% of my team when they were basically like, so what are you going to do? And so this conversation wasn't unexpected. It was, I think, at some point I was going to have to come to them with some sort of plan. And so when I did, and I laid out this clear framework for what we were prioritizing and why, my manager really had my back and gave us the autonomy to go make it happen. So from there, we were able to kind of just start doing and conversations. We didn't do any sort of big roadshow or kind of recalibration. We just, conversations with our partners would come up when they wanted our help on a project. And we would just very clearly say, actually, our team is focused on a set of priorities right now that are critical to driving shared understanding. And, we're not going to be able to dive deep on this with you, but here's what I will do. And here's what I can provide to you instead. The best we could do is be clear about our mission. And it wasn't always well received by leadership in other orgs who were expecting us to dive in and do more for their teams. But we had the backing that we needed, and we were able to go from there. And sometimes we end up compromising a little bit, or we decide that things have the potential to go a little sideways and we need to invest a little more in one area than we had planned on in the interest of creating clarity. So, things shift over time, but most of the time, grounding this conversation in a clear mission with buy-in from comms leadership and an alignment with our business priorities was enough for folks to kind of nod along and understand where we were coming from. So we actually haven't encountered very much resistance to this, which is amazing. And we had to just get comfortable with not having our hands on every single thing. So sometimes we talked about this a little bit in Raise the Tide, that sometimes things are going to go wrong because comms wasn't involved. And the silver lining there is that because we are intentional about what we're focused on, I'm usually pretty confident that when something goes wrong, it's going to be something that isn't highly disruptive or disastrous to the business, because we've intentionally prioritized the things that really need us. And so that's not comfortable. Like, it's not comfortable to see communications go out that you're like, oh God, that, that should have been framed a little bit differently. I really don't like how that landed, but it's low impact at the end of the day, which is where I want the high impact things are the things that I want us focused on and resolving before they go out the door.
That's something that you and I have talked about, and something I guide my clients on, which is when you're looking at the work, what's what I call white glove service, which is you're involved soup to nuts. You need to be involved in every single step of the way. You're getting it done. Maybe it's something, like a speech for the CEO at a town hall or something, right? Then there's the mid-level stuff where it's like guidance and coaching and support. And then there's the bucket of self-service. It's like, you can do this. We have confidence in you. You can just make it happen yourself with, here's the tool you can use to make it happen. And I think people struggle with this a lot because we often are perfectionists and we want our knowledge and guidance to show up everywhere. And it's really hard to determine what the right center place is for white glove and self-service, right? Where does that middle part lie?
Yep.
So I applaud you for that. But I do also recall, Jessica, you saying at one point, a couple of the executives saying, well, this is great, but you're still going to do that. You're still going to review everything.
Right?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that executives are all for prioritization until their thing gets deprioritized. And then there's panic, right? And this is where compromise happens. And this is where, I think that we need to be really willing to own our expertise. And, I'm sitting in a company that we don't have a chief communications officer. We don't have someone with a communications background sitting in leadership. We have a lot of, incredible allyship and advocacy within our C-suite, but there's no one sitting in our C-suite who has a communications background. And we are really trusted to bring that communications background to those conversations. And at the same time, we need to be able to show up in those conversations speaking the language of leadership, right? So we can't come in and say, well, no, we're not doing your thing because it's just not important. We need to be able to come in and say, we are, again, focused on the business priorities. And here is how what we are doing directly maps to the business priorities. And here's how this thing that you're asking us to do doesn't fall into that bucket. Doesn't mean I don't support it. Doesn't mean I'm not excited about it. Just means that I can't invest resources in it. So instead, I can give you let's talk through what you're actually trying to accomplish, and let's talk through, what it is that you think you need to get there if you still feel this needs to happen. And so, we land on compromise, and I think that there's got to be some trust there, but that trust comes from showing up in a way that leadership responds to and believes in.
I agree. I want to say that one thing I talk about a lot everywhere, and you've heard me say, is boundaries, right? We set boundaries, but we don't talk a lot about keeping boundaries. And one thing that's important about boundaries, and this is where compromise comes in, is that boundaries are flexible. You don't want somebody to jump over your boundary and completely disregard it, but boundaries are not barriers. They're not blockades. That's a very different thing. And so I think the masterful way that you are working on boundaries is important, because you're guiding and coaching and telling them what your boundaries are. And then you're open to being flexible with those, which is, I think, a really key thing for comms people to focus on. The leadership of being a communications business advisor is critical. And so showing up as a leader and being open to have a conversation while also stating, like, this is the knowledge. Do you agree with me? Do you understand that this is the priority?
Right.
Do you think that makes sense? What would you do if you were me? I love that phrase. What would you do if you were me? As you know. And I just want to share a little tidbit here. I happen to know that Jessica's even gone all the way to say to, like, the CEO's office, they wanted to do something. And she said, this doesn't really drive shared understanding. So
yeah, this isn't a conversation that's just limited to, our partners across the business functions. This really goes all the way up to the top of our organization. And, once again, just proving that, day in and day out, that we're here to be a partner to our leadership team. And we're here to be a partner to our CEO, and to make sure that we are focused on the things that he has established as priorities. And when his office wants to work on a program that doesn't map to that, it doesn't mean that it's not important, right? Like, he has things that he is excited about and is interested in doing that, for any number of reasons beyond just what we've established as our business goals. And so I want to see his office and his, the people surrounding him run with those projects. But we've gotten to a place where we are able to have really productive conversations about why that's a program that comms should or should not be involved in. And I think that that's what's most important. It's the boundaries that you're talking about, but it's also, addressing the boundaries and not pretending that they don't exist. It's not that we're going to let someone jump over them, but we're also not going to let someone push them without us really talking about them. Let's address the boundary, and let's address the guardrail and the reason that it's in place. And then if we need to move the boundary, I'm always happy to do that, because I'm talking to my colleagues and my partners and the people that I also need to move boundaries for me every once in a while. And so, let's make sure that we're having a really, productive and respectful conversation about how the success of each of our teams is being measured.
It's not surprising to me that you had this view in this conversation with the CEO's office, or you and I have talked about this. This is kind of what I talk about regularly on LinkedIn, which is how you found me originally. But I think it is surprising to a lot of people in our field to hear, whoa, because essentially what they're hearing is you said no to the CEO. And it's not as simple as that,
That's
right?
not it. No, no, I don't do that. That wouldn't go well for me. If Thomas is listening to this, like, that's not what I'm doing.
But the outcome is still like you're upholding what's right for the business, not in a specific individual. You're upholding what's right for the business. And that's the principal factor, right? And that's something that everyone down to the CEO can get behind when you're having the conversation around what's the right thing for the business, not an individual. And so I just want to say that's a key point that I think everybody needs to hear and just to sit with and think about, because it's about thinking of ourselves as a true business leader, not, beholden to any specific business area or individual, even the CEO. And I'd love to know, what was the midterm reaction to this? And by that, I mean, approximately 6 months later-ish.
Yeah, I mean, this is where things get interesting, right? Within 6 months of this exercise, I doubled the size of my team. And, I'm not saying that's a direct outcome, but I'm not saying that's a direct outcome. So, it became over 6 months, it became really clear what we could do and do well with the resources that we had. And those were limited resources. And I never stopped talking about what we could do with more. Programs that were getting 15% of a person's attention could be incredible if they had 100% of someone's attention. And areas of the business that have no comm support right now could look that much stronger if we had someone with the bandwidth for that work. A team that is doing fine but is a bit unfocused has so much potential if we hire a leader to oversee that particular discipline. And so the balls that we dropped and the things that we wanted to improve on, I kind of just kept reinforcing that, all we really need are the resources to make it happen, and we can do it. And meanwhile, we're going to keep focusing on these priorities and proving that our expertise and our focus is driving results. And so now we're having conversations that are far more strategic. We are in decision-making processes that we weren't in before when our work was highly tactical. And we're slowly making strides toward more innovation in comms, which is something that I'm really excited about, and just greater maturity in our approach as a company to communications, which is driven by the partnership and the expertise we're providing, and also by the buy-in that we have from leadership and the interest that they have in continuing these conversations and seeing how we just can continue to refine and improve.
So is the lesson here that prioritization is a great thing? Go when you're told to prioritize, go do it. You might end up with no team.
I mean, I think the lesson is that it's a great thing, and also that it takes time, right? Like it's not a day-to-day, I think that we think of prioritization, and it's funny, this conversation is very timely because I'm actually, like, on the day that we're recording this, I am having the kind of day where I have 17 things happening all at the same time, and I owe people 17 things that somehow are supposed to all be completed at the same time. And so I think we think of prioritization as this, like, day-to-day decision-making process. And what I've learned is that it's not that. It's the time that you invest up front in prioritizing the big buckets, and then being able to make decisions day to day against a framework that already exists. Because the conversations become smarter and they become more focused, and they become executive level conversations instead of just like, I can do this but not do that within the next hour, where, we're still thinking very tactically, and we're not really showing the value of the prioritization.
Do you have any other guidance or feedback for the communication leaders and professionals out there who hear that they need to prioritize?
I think just things that you have said many times and that you say all the time on this podcast, is just that this prioritization work is more effective when we remember that we are not baristas.
Yeah.
We love baristas, but, like, that's not me. And I think that my guidance is to just own that, to the mindset here is so important to the prioritization work, because if you're coming in it with a sort of scarcity mindset where you're just, like, panicked and, unable to deliver, and I just got to get things off my plate, then you get ruthless, right? And when you come into it with the mindset of, I'm here to protect this business and its reputation. I'm here to protect these leaders and their reputation. I'm here to make sure that our employees understand what we're doing as a business. How am I going to come into this project in a way that furthers that goal, not in a way that just like furthers my goal of surviving today? Coming into it with that, like, I am here as a business partner mindset is, I think, the key to unlocking how to do this well. Otherwise, we keep spinning the same cycle over and over again.
This has been fantastic, Jessica. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And I encourage anybody out there to follow Jessica. Occasionally, she posts some great things on LinkedIn, and keep an eye out for GitHub and all of the great things that they're doing. We'll put a link to Jessica's profile on LinkedIn in the show notes. Thanks for joining us, Jessica. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Tara. This was awesome. Well, can't wait to hear who you've got coming up next.
Thanks, Jessica. If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out taramcdonough.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it. The Communications Business Advisor podcast is brought to you by Raise the Tide, the program for women communications leaders and emerging leaders working in the corporate environment. Raise the Tide is part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. The program advances women in their careers and activates these trailblazers to advance our vision of a corporate world that not only invites communications leaders to act as critical advisors, but expects them to. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide raising the ships for our entire industry. For more information, visit www.raisethetide.net.